Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. Her phone vibrated at 2 in the morning between us. I heard it first as this small angry hum under my pillow. I froze, eyes shut, because I already knew what I was about to see. I'm Mark 34, and that was the moment my life split. The sound came again, longer this time, like whoever it was refused to give up. She shifted beside me, pulled the blanket higher, breathed out in this fake slow way. You know that act, right, when someone tries too hard to sound asleep? I rolled onto my side, just enough to crack one eye toward the glow. Her phone lay face up near the edge, screen already awake. A name sat on top of a thread, little heart emoji beside it. 3 new messages stacked under that name, all in a row. I didn't read every word, I didn't need to. She reached across me without opening her eyes, fingers careful on the case. The screen flipped down, then slid under her pillow like that was normal. Go back to sleep, she whispered, voice rough but weirdly steady. I hadn't said a single thing, which made it worse somehow. Another vibration hit, muffled now under her head, short and urgent. Her arm tightened around the pillow, not around me, and she pulled closer to the wall. I stared at the ceiling, listening to that soft buzzing like a fire alarm on mute. Later I'd call this the night I chose my role. Back then I told myself it could be work, something harmless. A late client, some project, some deadline that magically needed hearts. Even thinking that, my jaw locked so hard it hurt. I kept my breathing slow, like I was auditioning for the part of clueless husband. Everything okay? I finally asked, voice low, eyes still closed. She paused too long, just a beat past natural, and that beat said enough. Yeah, stupid work thing, wrong time zone, she muttered, shoulder stiff. The mattress dipped as she adjusted, hiding the phone deeper under her cheek. If I had actually believed her, I would have rolled over and hugged her. Instead, I lay flat, hands on my chest, fighting the urge to drag that phone out. You ever feel your own heart pounding louder than the noise in the room? That was me, counting each vibration like punches I couldn't block. I pushed the blanket back and sat up slow, joints aching, throat dry. I'm gonna use the bathroom, I said, and my voice sounded older. She made this soft noise, something between a yawn and a warning. The buzzing stopped the second my feet hit the floor. In the hallway, I leaned on the wall and stared at nothing. I should have walked out of the apartment right then. Instead, I watched my reflection in the dark window, just a tired guy in boxers. I remember thinking, if I confront her now, everything explodes by morning. Rent, health insurance, shared accounts. Those words lined up in my head like a checklist with teeth. She carried most of that weight, and I knew it too well. I hated myself for even factoring that in, but I did. Water ran in the sink while I tried to wash the thought away. It didn't work because the buzzing started again in the bedroom. Short bursts, one after another, like someone hammering on a locked door. I dried my hands and went back, already pretending nothing was wrong. When I opened the door, she was on her side facing the wall. One shoulder poked out from the blanket, tense and very awake. Her hand was under the pillow, thumb moving in small, quick taps. I caught the faint glow against her wrist before she killed the screen. You good? I asked, standing there a second too long. Fine, just go to sleep, you have work tomorrow, she answered. The way she said you landed like I was the only one with a schedule. I climbed back into bed, feeling like a guest in my own space. I turned onto my stomach and slid my arm under her pillow. Too high, I joked, adjusting it, my fingers brushing the corner of the phone. She flinched, then laughed once, sharp and thin, not her usual laugh. Stop, you're gonna make me drop it, she said, pulling the pillow away. That line stayed with me later, the part about dropping it. As if the worst thing in that moment was a cracked screen. Not the messages, not the lies, just the risk of breaking the device. I let her move my arm like I was the one invading. Another vibration hit, right under my ear this time, steady and insistent. I tilted my head, watching the edge of the pillow where light leaked out. A tiny slice of screen showed, bright line pressing against cloth. She sucked in a breath, then exhaled like someone about to jump. Seriously, just ignore it, she said, turning so her back pressed into me. Her hair tickled my face, warm and familiar, which pissed me off more. Can't they wait till morning? I asked, trying to sound half asleep. Some people don't know boundaries, she murmured, and yeah, I heard that. Her phone buzzed again, then again, spaced by a few seconds. It sounded nervous, if that makes sense, like whoever texted kept rewritten. J. I knew that rhythm because I had done it with her once, a long time ago. That thought hit hard, like I was listening to my own ghost. I shifted back, giving her space, though I wanted the opposite. If I pulled her in and asked straight out, she'd either confess or lie. Both options felt like stepping off a balcony in the dark. So I stared at the digital clock and let the minutes crawl past. At one point, the buzzing stopped for a whole minute. Then a longer vibration hit, a call this time, low and continuous. She jerked up on one elbow, grabbed the phone, killed it on the first ring. No hello, no checking who it was, just instant silence like she knew. What time is it? She asked, forcing this bored tone that fooled no one. Too late for whatever that is, I said, eyes open now. She squinted at me through the dark, trying to read how awake I really was. My face stayed calm, my teeth did all the shaking. It's just work, Mark, go to sleep seriously, she added, lying back down. She used my name like a shield, like saying it made the sentence true. I almost replied with his name, the one I had seen on the screen. The word sat on my tongue, hot and poisonous, and I swallowed it. I rolled onto my side again, this time facing away from her. I could feel her typing behind me, little taps through the mattress. Every so often she paused, waiting, I guess, for my breathing to even out. I gave her the performance she needed, long, slow breaths and still shoulders. When the tapping stopped, there was a stretch of quiet that hurt my ears. I pictured the messages lined up on her display, a conversation I had funded. Back then, I thought I was just avoiding a fight for that night. Now I know I was signing something much bigger in invisible ink. I told myself one rule as I stared into the darkness. I would not touch her phone, not snoop again, not dig for proof. If the truth wanted me, it would come find me without my help. That was how I justified staying, and how the cheating really started for me. I almost opened her messages the minute she walked out. The door clicked behind her and the silence felt too loud. Her phone was gone with her, locked in her bag as usual. My hand still twitched toward the table where it used to sit. I poured coffee and missed the mug on my first try. Liquid ran across the counter and dripped onto the floor in thin lines. I grabbed a towel, pressing hard, like I could scrub away the night. In my head, I kept seeing that tiny glow under her pillow. When she came out earlier, she moved too smooth for someone exhausted. Her face had that bright work mask already on, sharp and in place. Busy day, she said, tying her hair, not looking straight at me once. Yeah, I answered, watching her slide the phone into her bag first thing. I almost asked who kept calling at those hours last night. The words lined up behind my teeth, ready to punch through. Instead, I asked if she wanted toast, which sounded pathetic even to me. She laughed fast and light, then kissed my cheek and checked the time. At the door, she turned back, fingers curled around the handle with force. You good? She asked, eyes scanning my face like a quick audit. Fine, just tired, I replied, forcing my jaw to unclench on that last word. She hesitated 1 second, then walked out like nothing waited between us. Once she left, I stared at the empty spot where her bag used to hang. There was no proof in the apartment, just my brain replaying vibrations. I opened the drawer where we kept bills and stared at the stack. Those papers weighed more than any suspicion I had that morning. I picked up our latest statement, the joint one with both incomes. Her numbers sat higher, bold and stable, mine smaller and less important. If I blew things up today, all of this crumbled by default. That thought pressed on my chest until my ribs felt like cheap plastic. So I made a deal with myself while sipping cold coffee. No snooping, no grabbing her phone, no surprise interrogations at midnight. If something ugly was happening, it would surface without my help eventually. I told myself that meant I was mature, not scared out of my mind. Work that day felt like moving underwater through old glue. Every email I tried to answer turned into a blinking cursor staring back. Whenever my screen refreshed, I pictured hers lighting up across town. I must have checked the clock 20 times before lunch even started. At one point, I opened our banking app just to distract myself. The balances looked fine, nothing weird, nothing out of place at all. It hit me then, harder than any late-night alert had done. Losing her meant losing the life those numbers quietly held together. I wish I could tell you I chose my dignity that afternoon. Truth is, I chose stability and called it patience so I could breathe. I closed the app, pushed my chair back, and went for more coffee. On the way, I caught my reflection in mirror. Why recognize the guy faking calm? By the time I drove home, I had my script rehearsed. Act normal, crack a joke, do not sound jealous or needy tonight. If she suspected anything, she would just hide deeper and get careful. I convinced myself I was playing the long game, not ducking out. Her car was already in the driveway when I pulled up. My stomach twisted when I saw lights on inside the house. I walked in and she was at the table with her laptop open. Her blazer hung on the chair behind her, one sleeve turned inside out. "Hey, you're home later than usual," she said, closing the laptop in one quick move. "Traffic," I answered, dropping my keys, trying not to stare at her bag on the floor. She leaned back, stretching, rolling her neck like she carried the entire world. "Gotta finish one report, then I'm yours," she added with a tired smile. I nodded and headed to the laundry like a trained assistant. Her blazer lay over the hamper, half-folded, makeup smudge on the collar. I reached into the pocket for stray receipts, just like I always did. My fingers found paper crushed tight into a hard little ball. My chest went hot before I even saw what it was exactly. I smoothed it out on top of the washer with both hands. Hotel name at the top, city printed beside it, room charge in the middle. The timestamp screamed late afternoon on a day she swore she worked late. My eyes jumped to the rate, then the description line just under. Standard room, 2 guests, it read clean and indifferent on the page. I read that line 3 times, as if it might change suddenly. Noise from the hallway floated in, her chair scraping as she stood up. For a second I considered walking out and dropping the receipt in her lap. I pictured the look on her face, the explosion, the useless explanations. Part of me even craved the argument, just to feel something clear. My hands instead folded the paper back up along the same creases. I slipped it into my own pocket, feeling it scratch my thigh with every move. My heart hammered so hard I thought she would hear it from the doorway. She appeared there, leaning on the frame, twisting her wedding band with her thumb. "You okay in here?" she asked, eyebrows knit like she might actually care. "Yeah, just starting a load," I answered, keeping my back turned to her. I knew if I faced her right then, everything would spill out. Her footsteps moved away slowly, each one giving me an extra second to decide. I stared at the washer controls and realized I was choosing again. I started the cycle and watched the water rise, loud against the drum. The receipt in my pocket felt heavier than the wet clothes spinning inside. I walked to our room, moved her bag off the bed, and sat down. Above my head, the ceiling fan spun lazy circles that matched my thoughts. When she joined me later, she dropped onto the mattress with a sigh. "Tomorrow might be another long one," she said, texting with one hand still. My fingers brushed the edge of the receipt, hidden deep in my pocket. I opened my mouth, then closed it so fast my teeth clicked. "Do what you need to do," I finally managed, eyes on the wall. "I know things are intense for you right now," I added, almost choking on the words. She relaxed next to me, shoulders lowering, phone still glowing against her palm. In that moment I realized I had just endorsed whatever was happening. That night while she scrolled beside me, I laid out my new system. I would clock every odd charge, every strange schedule change, every missing hour. I would track without confronting, observe without touching, record without accusing. Know everything, say nothing, that was the rule that kept our life untouched. Her fingernails dug into my arm as we walked in. "Relax," she whispered, smiling wide for everyone else, not for me. "If my boss talks to you, please be normal tonight." That last word stuck in my throat like a dare. I hate these things, but I had pushed to come. I wanted faces, names, something living to match the late calls. "Remember, they think we're solid," she added, straightening my collar with sharp little tugs. That line told me exactly what role I was playing there. A waiter moved past and bumped my shoulder hard enough to jolt me. "Drink first," she said, already steering me toward the bar with quick steps. Her hand slid off my arm as soon as we reached the crowd. Give me 5 minutes, I need to say hello around. She vanished into the cluster of suits before I could answer. I watched her move from group to group, all charm and quick laughs. Every few seconds her hand brushed her phone, checking without pulling it out. I stayed at the counter, fingers drumming, waiting for whoever he was. Beer or something stronger? The bartender asked, towel over one shoulder. Whatever's fast, I replied, not caring what ended up in the glass. My eyes never left her, tracking the way she leaned into certain people. There was one guy she reached before all the others. She saw him and her whole posture shifted in an instant. Her shoulders loosened, her face lit up in this automatic bright way. He stepped forward with zero hesitation, hand landing on her waist like routine. They hugged a little too long for coworkers in front of everyone. I knew right then, before I heard his voice or his name. She leaned back, still close, saying something that made his jaw unclench. He laughed, head tilted down toward her, like they were alone in the room. My drink hit the counter harder than I meant, foam spilling over the edge. She finally glanced over and spotted me watching from the bar. For a second something flickered in her eyes, almost like guilt, almost like fear. Then her whole expression reset into the usual cheerful wife mode. She waved him toward me, and I understood this was part of her plan. They approached side by side, two aligned for strangers not touching now. Hey, you two haven't properly met yet, she said, voice bright and sharp. This is Nate, we work together on most projects. My stomach clenched at how easily that sentence left her mouth. Nate stuck out his hand with a confident, polished grin. Man, I've heard a lot about you, he said, clasping my hand tight. His grip was firm enough to feel like a test, not a greeting. I tried not to imagine that same hand on her back somewhere else. All good things, I hope, I answered, teeth showing more than a real smile. Only that you're a team player, he replied, eyes flicking toward her quick. He took a sip from his glass, watching my reaction over the rim. That small pause told me he knew exactly what he was implying. She laughed a little too quickly, fingers straightening her bracelet again. He means you're very understanding about the long hours, she added, voice light. My tongue felt heavy, but the words still came out smooth. Hey, if it pays the bills, I can live with it. Nate relaxed at that, shoulders dropping just a little, face opening up. You have no idea how rare that is, he said, nodding like we shared something. Some partners get weird about late nights with the same person. My hand tightened around my glass until I thought it might crack. She nudged his elbow, a warning wrapped in a playful tap. Anyway, we're boring him with work talk, she said, stepping between us a bit. I watched that tiny movement, the way she shielded him while smiling. Protecting him from me, even though I hadn't done anything yet. So how are you liking all this chaos? Nate asked, sweeping a look around. It's loud, I answered, then let the silence stretch just long enough. Interesting crowd though, lots of familiar names in one place. He studied me, clearly weighing how much I knew. My brain kept replaying that line from the receipt at home. 2 guests, single room, weekday, the same region printed at the top. I looked at him and pictured his name on that invoice instead of hers. The thought made my skin feel too tight for my body. She broke the tension by lifting her glass toward both of us. To surviving this quarter, she said, eyes bright, smile turned toward him first. Nate clinked his glass against hers lightly, then tapped mine as an afterthought. That simple order told me exactly how he ranked in her head. You must hate how often she's stuck with me, he said, turning back. It probably feels like I stole your evenings for half the year. His tone was casual, but his gaze locked onto mine, waiting. He wanted permission for something we both understood but did not name. Honestly, I'm just glad she has someone competent, I replied, shrugging. You guys clearly handle things I'd screw up in 5 minutes. He laughed, tension sliding off his face in one smooth shift. In that laugh I heard relief, like he'd passed some twisted test. She slid her arm through mine then, gripping just a little too tight. See, this is why I keep him, she joked, leaning her head toward me. Her body pressed close, but the warmth felt almost strategic. I stood there between them, knowing exactly which of us was real. Come meet my boss, she murmured, tugging me away from the bar. Nate stayed behind, phone already in his hand, checking something fast. I looked back once and caught him staring after her, not me. His eyes dropped when he noticed, but the image burned in anyway. As we weaved through the room, she dropped her voice low. He's important for my promotion, so please be nice around him. The way she said important landed wrong, heavier than she meant it to. I wondered how many ways that word applied to him lately. You trust me, right? She asked, stopping just short of the next group. My throat went dry because it was such a loaded question. I could have blown everything up right there with one answer. Instead, I nodded once and felt something inside me harden in place. For the rest of the night, I watched them navigate around each other. Never too close, never too far, always within easy reach in the crowd. She laughed at his jokes before anyone else, almost by instinct. He looked for her reaction first, every time he opened his mouth. When people asked how long we had been married, she jumped in. Long enough that he knows all my stress habits, she joked, patting my shoulder. Nate smirked at that for half a second like he knew more than I did. I caught it, stored it, added it to the ugly list in my head. Later, near the end, I went back to the bar alone. My head pounded, but I needed one more drink to keep cool. Nate appeared beside me like he had been waiting for this moment. He ordered something quick, then turned toward me with that same smooth grin. Seriously, man, you're a good sport about everything, he said, lifting his glass. Not everyone can handle their partner being married to their job. He let that sentence hang there with that one word emphasized. For a second, he looked almost sorry, which somehow felt worse. Work keeps her happy, I answered, staring at the mirror behind the bar. And if she's happy, things run smoothly for both of us. Our reflections stood side by side, almost the same height, completely different lives. I realized I was the only one pretending this was about overtime. When we finally left, the night air hit my face like a slap. She slipped her hand into mine, swinging our arms with forced cheer. That went well, right? She asked, eyes searching my expression. I squeezed her fingers once, already rewriting my rule in my head. I did not just know she was involved with someone anymore. Now I had a face, a voice, a hand I had shaken. I had stood next to the man who thanked me for my cooperation. And I walked to our car knowing I would still not confront her. My kid shoved a drawing into my chest before I got inside. Look what I made, he yelled, jumping up and down in socks. The paper bent against my shirt as I tried not to drop my keys. Careful, bud, let me see, I said, already feeling something coil up. 3 stick figures stood in a row with huge round heads. Names were written under each one in clumsy, careful letters. Mom, Dad, and then the third one. Nata. My fingers tightened on the edge of the page so I wouldn't tear it. Wow, you worked hard on this, I managed, mouth suddenly dry. Yeah, it's us at the park, he answered like it was obvious. I knew right away I had never been at that park with them. I studied the drawing harder, like the details could save me. Mom and Nate stood right next to each other with matching smiles. The dad figure floated off to the side, a little shorter, arms straight down. There were little scribbled hearts over Mom and Nate, not over me. That's me, I asked, tapping the lonely stick guy on the edge. Yeah, you're holding the snacks, he said, pointing to nothing in my hand. I swallowed because there was clearly nothing there on the page. How come I'm so far away from you guys then? My kid shrugged and moved closer, warm shoulder against my leg. You were busy, you want to throw stuff away, he answered quickly. The way he spoke told me this was a story he'd already been given. A script but written for a 6-year-old. When was this park day? I asked, forcing my voice light. He frowned, thinking hard, tongue poking out one side a little. Saturday, he said, when you had to do boring grown-up things. I knew exactly which Saturday he meant, and I hadn't left the neighborhood. That weekend, she told me she needed to take him to an event. She mentioned a client thing, short, no big deal, back by lunchtime. I had stayed home fixing stuff around the house, feeling useless and calm. Now I saw that whole day drawn in crayon with a different cast. Who put you on the swings? I asked, pointing at the blobs behind them. He grinned wide, eyes lighting up at the memory. Nate pushed me higher than Mom, he said, stretching his arms up. My ribs tightened at how excited he sounded saying that name. He's funny, he jokes like cartoons and buys the good fries. My kid hopped away, reenacting some game they played together. He let me climb the tallest thing, he added, beaming like it was heroic. I felt like someone slid my place in the family across the table. Hey champ, where's mom now? I asked, trying to breathe normally. In the kitchen, she told me not to bother her till you got home. That line made everything spike in my head at once. She knew this drawing was coming to me first. He ran off toward his toys, humming some tune under his breath. I stood in the hallway, still holding the paper with sweaty hands. I wanted to crumple it, burn it, do anything but keep looking at it. Instead, I smoothed the corners down, like I was preserving evidence. When I walked into the kitchen, she was at the counter on her phone. Her thumb moved fast over the screen, eyes narrowed in concentration. She didn't hear me at first, too focused on whatever filled that chat. I watched the little lift in her mouth before she noticed me there. "What's up?" she asked, locking the screen in one quick motion. I held up the drawing between us like a flag I didn't want. "He made this today," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted. Her eyes flicked over the page, then widened a fraction at the name. "Oh wow," she said slowly, pressing her lips together hard. She reached for the paper, but I kept my grip a second longer. "He really likes Nate," I added, letting that hang in the space. Her hand froze midway, then dropped to the counter with a soft tap. "He told you about the park?" she asked, twisting her fingers together. "Yeah, swings, fries, the tallest thing, real big day," I replied. She exhaled through her nose, eyes darting toward the doorway. "He was restless. Nate offered to help after we ran that errand." "You didn't mention that part," I said, keeping my tone almost casual. "It didn't feel important," she answered, shoulders rising in a tight shrug. "Just a quick stop, he needed to burn energy, that's all." She reached for the drawing again, slower this time, watching my face. I let her take it, because grabbing it back would start something explosive. She studied the picture like it might start shouting accusations any second. "He shouldn't be writing names like that," she muttered, tapping the letters. That bothered me more than anything else she'd said so far. "You mean his name or Nate S?" I asked, leaning against the counter edge. She flinched just enough for me to catch it before she smoothed over. "You know what I mean," she replied, folding the paper along a new crease. I stared at that fold like it was a small act of damage control. "He thinks Nate is part of our little group now," I said quietly. "He drew him between us, like that's normal, like that's how we stand." My voice cracked on the last word, which I hated instantly. She looked away, jaw clenched, nostrils pulling in a sharp breath. "It was one afternoon," she argued, dropping the drawing on the table. "He's attached because Nate bought him junk food and pushed a swing." Her fingers drummed a fast, nervous pattern on the wood. "You're reading way too much into kids' scribbles." "I wasn't there at all though," I replied, staring at the page. "He told me I was doing boring adult stuff somewhere else." I watched that land in her mind, the exact phrase he'd used. That had been fed to him, the way you spoon-feed medicine. "He misunderstood," she said quickly, grabbing the drawing again. "We talked about how you had work to catch up on. I hadn't brought anything home that weekend, and she knew it. I could feel the lie settle between us like another person." Small feet pounded down the hall before I could push further. My kid burst into the kitchen, cheeks flushed, hair messy. "Did you show him?" he asked, tugging at her sleeve excitedly. She pasted on a bright smile so fast it almost hurt to watch. "Yeah, he saw," she answered, holding the drawing up again. "It's really good, but we don't need to write everyone's name, okay?" He frowned, looking from her to me, confused by the sudden new rule. "But you told me to write who is who, remember?" That line hit her harder than anything I could have thrown. Her fingers tightened on the top edge, crinkling the paper slightly. "For family, sure," she replied, voice a little higher now. "Friends don't always need to be labeled like that." "He's not just a friend," my kid insisted, staking his tiny claim. "He's your best work buddy, you said that on the phone." He beamed at her like he was repeating a special secret. Her eyes flicked to mine, and this time she didn't look away. "Go wash your hands for dinner," I said, stepping in quickly. He groaned but shuffled out, dragging his feet with exaggerated drama. We both watched him vanish around the corner, air heavy behind him. As soon as he was gone, she dropped the cheerful act entirely. "You're reading into this," she said, voice low, almost a growl. "He likes Nate because he acts like an older cousin or something." She gestured vaguely with one hand, like that explained everything. "He stepped in for one afternoon when I was overwhelmed." "Must be nice having backup like that," I answered, not even hiding it. "Kid thinks it's a big deal, drawing it means it stuck." I tapped the page in front of us, right over Nate's goofy stick face. "He put him right next to you for a reason." Her forehead creased, anger and fear fighting for space in her features. "You didn't complain when you thought it was just extra hours," she snapped. "You liked the promotion talk, the bigger checks, the security." Her chest rose and fell faster, matching the tempo in my own chest. She wasn't wrong about that part, and we both knew it. I had enjoyed the upgrades, the safety net, the calmer bills. Knowing that twisted inside me now like a bad joke. I'd been fine with the cost until I saw it colored in. "I don't want him used as cover," I said, quieter now. "If you two are going to play work hero, leave him out of it." My fingers curled against the counter to keep from shaking. It felt strange drawing a line this late, and only for this reason. She pushed the drawing toward me like it burned her hand. "Fine, you keep it then," she said, turning to open a cabinet. Her back was stiff, shoulders bunched high, voice flat and cold. "I don't want to fight about some childish doodle." I slid the paper off the table and folded it carefully once. Not like a father admiring art, more like someone storing a record. "I'll hang it in my office," I said, forcing myself to sound light. She froze for a beat, then slammed the cabinet door a little too hard. During dinner, he kept bringing up Nate between mouthfuls. "How come he doesn't come over way more?" he asked, poking his food. "He's funny, he lets me win at games sometimes." I watched her stare down at her plate, barely chewing. "He's busy, buddy," she answered after a long pause, wiping her mouth. "He has his own house, his own grown-up stuff to handle." "Then why did you say I'm his favorite little dude?" our kid asked. That made her cough, the words catching in her throat mid-sip. I almost laughed at the look that flashed across her face. Not because it was funny, but because it was so uncomfortable. "This is between you and your mom," I said, hiding behind that line. It was a coward move, and I knew it even as I used it. After dinner, he begged for one more story before bed. "Can you tell the one where Nate did the silly voice?" he asked. My stomach clenched because I had no idea what he meant. From the hallway, I heard her answer him in a tired tone. "Not tonight, Daddy can do a different story," she said. "It's more fun when you both do it," he complained from his pillow. There was a long silence, then the sound of her sitting on his mattress. I leaned against the wall outside, listening like some stranger. "You know Nate is just Mom's coworker, right?" she asked softly. There was a little wobble in her question that he missed. "Yeah, but he's still my friend," he replied without hesitation. "He said he's on my team now." Those words lodged somewhere deep in my chest. I could hear her take a slow breath, steadying herself beside him. "Well, your main team is still me and Dad," she said quickly. Even she didn't sound convinced by the way those words landed. I stepped into the doorway, forcing a smile for my kid. "You heard her, I'm the captain of the bedtime squad," I joked. He laughed and reached for me, already forgetting the serious part. She stood up fast, brushing past me with a quick, unreadable glance. When he finally drifted off, I went back to the kitchen alone. Her phone lay on the counter for once, unlocked next to a glass. A preview banner slid across the top with a name I already knew. My hand moved without thinking, pulling it closer to read. The message was short. "Missed you today, tell him I said hi." No emoji, no hearts, nothing obviously dirty. That almost made it worse, like they didn't need decoration anymore. My thumb hovered over the screen for a full second. I could have scrolled up, could have taken screenshots and saved everything. Instead, I locked it and set it down exactly where it had been. Even then, I was more committed to my rule than to the truth. She walked in just as I stepped back from the counter. Her eyes flicked to the phone, then up to my face. "You're awfully quiet tonight," she remarked, grabbing the glass. I shrugged, feeling the folded drawing against my leg again. Tired, I answered, the safest word I owned by then. She watched me for a beat, searching for cracks in the mask. Tomorrow's another crazy one, she said, turning away to rinse the glass. For all of us, I replied, and this time I meant something different. Later in bed, she curled against me like nothing had shifted. Her head rested on my chest, hand tracing lazy circles on my side. If anything ever bothered you, you'd tell me, right? She asked quietly. I stared at the ceiling, the drawing burned into my brain. Yeah, I lied, of course. She relaxed, breathing evening out, trusting that answer. I watched the dark room and listened to the house settle around us. And I knew with absolute clarity that the affair had an extra witness now. We need to talk. She dropped that line from the hallway like a grenade. No warm-up, no joke, just those 4 words hitting the air. I was on the couch scrolling nothing, pretending to care about news. My thumb froze over the screen because I knew which topic was finally coming. She walked in slow, holding a glass with both shaking hands. Her face looked wrong, tight around the mouth, eyes too bright. For a second I thought she might keep walking and leave entirely. Instead, SH. He sat on the edge of the coffee table facing me. Can you turn that off? She asked, motioning at the TV with her chin. Her voice sounded thin, like it had been stretched all day. I hit the power button without looking at what I was closing. Suddenly it was just us and the low hum of the fridge. My heart started pounding before she even opened her mouth. I already knew the subject, I just didn't know the script yet. Part of me wanted to hand her a printed list of lies. Instead, I tucked my hands under my thighs so she would not see them shake. I'm not okay, she said, staring at the carpet between us. Her leg bounced fast, heel tapping a jumpy rhythm on the floor. You're going to be angry, but I can't keep this in. That last sentence landed like the opening line of a confession. If this is about work again, I'm out of advice, I said. I was stalling, giving myself time to rebuild my neutral face. It's not just work, she answered, jaw clenching around those words. That just told me everything before she spelled out the rest. She took a long breath and gripped the glass so hard it squeaked. I think I'm attached to someone, she said, still not looking up. The pause before attached made my stomach twist in a tight knot. Attached is such a clean word for what she had done. I let a beat of silence stretch between us until it hurt. You mean like a crush? I asked, even though I knew better. She winced at that, shoulders curling in almost like a kid. It's deeper than that, she admitted, fingers digging into her knees. Is it someone from the office? I asked, already knowing the answer. My voice came out steady, which honestly scared me a little. She nodded once, tiny movement, like a guilty tick. Yeah, it started with late nights and stupid inside jokes. Nate's face flashed in my head, that practiced grin at the bar. The drawing on our fridge flashed right after, his name under cartoons. I could have said his name out loud and ended the performance. Instead, I decided to see how much truth she could manage alone. Did anything happen? I asked, keeping my gaze fixed on hers now. I wanted her to blink first, to crack before I did. She swallowed hard, throat working, eyes shining but not spilling yet. Depends what you call something, she answered, which told me plenty. Don't play lawyer, I said, leaning forward just a little. Either there was a line crossed or there was. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth while I said it. She flinched like the words had weight, which they did. There were texts that weren't professional, she admitted finally, voice rough. Coffee that wasn't just about deadlines or numbers or whatever. Her fingers twisted the hem of her shirt like she might rip it. A couple hugs where I didn't move away fast enough. That last one almost made me laugh, not in a funny way. She was describing a fire with the language of a small kitchen accident. She was shrinking everything down to see if I would swallow it. I felt this weird calm slide over me as I watched. Is that it? I asked, letting a sharper edge creep in. No hotels, no afternoons that vanished, no extra errands. Her eyes jumped up to mine at the word hotels and stayed there. That slip showed me she knew exactly how far she'd actually gone. Nothing physical like that, she said, too quickly, too clean. I swear I caught it before it turned into something worse. Her hand lifted like she wanted to grab mine, then stopped midair. I'm telling you now because I don't want to lose us. That line almost broke me, and I hate admitting it. Hearing her talk about not wanting to lose us hurt in a special way. Because there she was, editing the story while asking for mercy. And there I was, letting her do it. You realize this still counts, I said, hearing the dullness in my tone. It's not less real because you gave it a softer label. She nodded fast, tears finally spilling over and streaking her cheeks. I know, I hate myself for letting it go that far. She set the glass down so hard it clinked against the table. Her hands flew to her face, rubbing her eyes in short, harsh motions. I feel trapped between what I'm supposed to want and what I feel, she said. It was the first honest sentence I'd heard all evening. Do you love him? I asked, hearing my own question like it came from elsewhere. I already knew the answer, but I wanted her to hear herself. She froze, then shook her head too forcefully to be believable. I'm confused, not in love, not like that, she insisted. My chest tightened at the word confused because it covered everything. It covered every missed call, every hidden weekend, every sudden mood switch. I care about him, she added softer now, eyes on her hands again. That's why I need to set boundaries and fix this. And I'm supposed to help you fix your thing with another guy, I asked. It came out flatter than I meant, but not wrong. She winced at your thing like I'd scraped a fresh bruise. I'm asking you not to give up on me, she replied. For a second I saw two paths spread out in front of me. One where I pulled the hotel slip from my drawer and dropped it down. One where I mentioned the message about missing her and saying hi. One where I pulled out the goddamn drawing and pointed at every line. In that version, she would be cornered with no room to maneuver. No more soft phrases, no more half-honest summaries and omissions. We would either burn everything to the ground or rebuild from nothing. There would be screaming, maybe lawyers, definitely a different life. Instead, I took the other path, the one I already knew too well. I sat back, let out a slow breath, and rubbed my forehead. How long has this been bothering you? I asked, as if this was new. Her shoulders sagged, like someone had finally loosened a rope. A while, she admitted, voice shaking with a weird relief. I kept telling myself it was harmless, that it would fade. She laughed once, harsh, no humor in it at all. But then I realized I was thinking about him on weekends too. That one hit harder than the earlier details somehow. Weekends were supposed to be our unspoken line, our protected space. I pictured her at the park, smiling at him while our kids screamed happily. That image sat behind my eyes like a bad screensaver. Did he say anything? I asked, needing to hear the answer. I already knew he felt bold enough to joke with me at parties. She hesitated long enough to tell me everything without speaking. He cares about me too, she said very quietly. You mean he told you or you just assumed? I pushed. Her lips parted, then closed, then parted again like she was chewing the words. We talked about it one night when we stayed late, she admitted. He said he hadn't felt this pulled toward someone in a long time. My skin crawled at the phrase pulled toward, so gentle and intimate. It sounded like something from a bad romance, but I knew it was real. I could see him saying it, leaning against her desk like he owned it. I could see her absorbing those words like oxygen. I should have quit right then, she said, shaking her head hard. Instead, we agreed to be adults and keep it under control. Her eyes filled again, this time with shame instead of fear. You can see how well that plan worked. You two ever alone outside the building? I asked, pushing farther. My stomach twisted as I did it, but I needed her version. Once, she said quickly, staring at the table. Coffee near the office during the day, nothing secretive. That once sat between us like a dare even she didn't believe. I pictured the hotel date and wanted to ask what she called that. My tongue actually pressed against my teeth to stop the words. I chose silence again, which still makes me angry with myself. So what now? I finally asked, throat tight. You dump him, you stay, we pretend this was a brief mistake. I heard my own sarcasm curl around the last two words. She squeezed her eyes shut, like that hurt more than shouting would have. I already told him I need distance, she said, wiping her cheeks. I told him I love my family and this can't keep going. My stomach flipped at hearing her use the word love in that order. I wondered which part of that sentence was actually true. How did he take it? I asked, leaning back into the couch. This was the part I secretly wanted to know most. He said he understood that he didn't want to ruin my life, she answered. Then he said he'll always be there if I change my mind. That last part made my vision narrow for a second. So he hadn't stepped back, he'd just moved slightly to the side. He was still on the field, waiting for the next opening she gave him. I realized I was the only one actually deciding anything permanent here. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice almost gone now. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, maybe not even another chance. Her shoulders shook once, like a small earthquake she tried to swallow. I just couldn't handle lying to you anymore. That line almost made me choke because it was so backwards. She was lying in real time while claiming she couldn't lie. But she had handed me a smaller version, hoping I'd accept that as truth. And the awful part is, I nearly did. You should have told me the first time you felt something, I said. I could have handled that way better than this halfway mess. I wasn't sure if that was actually true, but it sounded reasonable. She nodded anyway, eager to agree with anything that kept us intact. I know I was scared you'd walk out, she replied. And I panicked when I realized how far my head had gone. She wiped her nose with the back of her wrist like a teenager. I kept thinking if I just push it down, it'll disappear. And did it? I asked, staring right at her. She held my gaze for the first time. That night. No, she admitted, it got stronger and I hated that. At least that part sounded like an honest sentence. For a few moments, we just listened to the house around us. I could hear the faint hum of traffic outside, steady and distant. Inside my chest, though, everything felt loud and out of rhythm. I knew this conversation would shape the rest of my life. I don't want details, I finally said, though that was a lie. If I start asking, I won't know where to stop. I felt my throat burn as the next words came out. I just need to know if you're choosing us or not. Her whole body seemed to fold in on itself with that question. I am, she said, no pause, no stutter that time. I'm choosing this house, this marriage, our kid, all of it. She reached across the space between us, palm open, eyes pleading. I stared at her hand for a long second, longer than was polite. In that gap, I thought about bank accounts and insurance and schedules. I thought about our kid drawing 3 figures and not understanding why it hurt. I thought about starting over alone with nothing lined up. Then I put my hand in hers, and something inside me went numb. Not in a dramatic passing out way, more like a switch flipping. Okay, I said, then we work on it, but things change. I didn't even know what that meant yet, but it sounded necessary. She let out a sound, half laugh, half sob, and squeezed hard. Thank you, she whispered, leaning forward to rest her forehead on my knuckles. I swear I'll prove you didn't make a mistake. That promise cut deeper than any accusation would have. Because here's the ugly truth I have to admit. I had enough in my head to destroy the version she presented. I could have called out every missing piece and watched the story collapse. Instead, I chose to protect the edited version she offered. Not for her. For the structure around us. For the kid asleep down the hall who still thought heroes were real. For the paychecks and cosign debts and the illusion of steady ground. We sat like that for a while, her gripping my hand like a lifeline. At some point she moved closer, resting her head on my shoulder. I'll cut off the personal talks, keep it strictly professional, she murmured. You won't have to worry about him anymore. I didn't answer right away because I didn't believe that at all. You can't unring a bell like that, not just by promising discipline. You handle your side, I said eventually, I'll handle mine. What I meant was I'll keep pretending if you keep pretending too. Later, lying in bed, she curled into me tighter than usual. Her breath shook against my chest once, then settled into a steady pattern. I'm glad I told you, she whispered into the dark. I feel lighter now. I stared into nothing, wide awake, heart still hammering. I didn't feel lighter at all. I felt like someone had handed me a loaded secret and walked away. From that night on, the cheating wasn't just her thing anymore, it was ours. I moved the money out on a Tuesday. Clicked transfer, entered the amount, stared at the confirm button. My hand shook so badly I almost mistyped the password. When it went through, I knew I had finally picked a side. The banker had called earlier that week, cheerful and polite. "New account all set, you can move funds anytime," he said. I told him it was for personal savings, which was technically true. I didn't mention the part where I planned to disappear from my own house. I took just enough that she wouldn't notice right away. Not nothing, not everything, just a quiet slice off the top. Enough for a deposit, a few bills, some ugly furniture. I told myself I was being fair while I robbed my own life. The apartment came next, a ground floor unit that smelled faintly stale. The landlord walked me through like he expected me to bargain. "Place stays pretty quiet, most people keep to themselves," he said. Those words sold me more than anything else in the listing. "Looks fine," I answered, opening and closing a cabinet just to move. My stomach had this heavy rolling feeling, like I might throw up. I wasn't picturing my future there, I was picturing her reaction. Still, I signed, wrote the check, and walked out with keys. Driving back home that day felt like driving through two timelines. In one, I was still the husband trying to fix things. In the other, I was a guy who already left, just not physically. My hands stayed at 10 and 2, like I didn't trust myself. When I stepped through our door, dinner smell hit me first. She called from the kitchen, voice upbeat, like our big talk had worked. "How was your day?" she asked, like we were normal again. "Busy," I answered, hanging my jacket with a hand that still shook. I watched her move around the kitchen, quick and efficient, totally familiar. She joked about some meeting, rolled her eyes, mimicked her boss. I laughed at the right moments because that was my job there. At the same time, I pictured this same scene without me in it. After our kid went to bed, she curled up on the couch. Her head rested on my shoulder, legs tucked under a blanket. "We're going to be okay, right?" she asked, voice small. I stared straight ahead because if I looked at her I'd crack. "We'll figure it out," I said, which was technically honest. She snuggled closer, like that sentence gave her real comfort. "I told him we need strict distance now," she whispered, almost proud. I nodded, thinking I'm the one leaving and you don't see it. Packing started small, so I could lie to myself about it. A hoodie here, a pair of jeans there, some shirts. I told her I was clearing clutter, trying to be more organized. Really, I was building a second life in the trunk of my car. The first load to the new place felt unreal, like a test run. I carried the box in, set it down, and just stared. There was no sound inside, no history, no echoes of us. The emptiness scared me, but also calmed something in my chest. I made 3 trips that week, always when she worked late. Each time I told our kid I had errands and would be back soon. He barely looked up from his cartoons, which somehow hurt extra. I wanted him to cling, to give me a reason to stall. One night, halfway through moving a box, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Her name lit up the screen with a short message. "Running later than planned, don't wait up for me." I stood in the empty apartment and laughed once, sharp and humorless. Of course she was running late. Of course she assumed I was home playing house alone. In a twisted way, we were both lying in parallel tracks. We had built something where neither of us lived honestly anymore. Back at the house, she kissed my cheek when she finally came in. Her hair was messy, makeup faintly smudged, smile tired but bright. "Long day, but I think things are settling down," she said. I glanced at the clock and did not ask where she actually was. "Want tea?" she asked, already filling a mug without waiting. I watched her hands move, quick and practiced, as if everything was normal. "We could look at trips for the summer," she added, hopeful. My chest tightened because I had already paid a deposit somewhere else. "I'm not sure about travel this year," I answered, scratching my neck. She studied my face like she was checking for hidden damage. "Still upset?" she asked, voice softer, like we were fragile glass. "I'm just reevaluating things," I said, and that part was completely true. That night I barely slept, counting down milestones in my head. Account set up. Lease signed. Half my clothes moved. Every step made staying feel more ridiculous. She rolled toward me in the dark, draping an arm across my chest. "I really am trying," she whispered, breath warm against my skin. I stopped talking to him about personal stuff. That line twisted the knife and also weirdly confirmed my plan. Because here's what I realized lying there, wide awake next to her. Even if she cut it off, even if he vanished, something broke. Not just trust. Respect maybe. Or whatever piece of me had lived comfortably in that house. Leaving became less about punishing her and more about saving myself. That sounds dramatic, but that's how it felt from inside. I was tired of living like a roommate who knew too much. Tired of being grateful for a salary that came with strings. I picked the final day on a random morning while brushing my teeth. No anniversary, no big date, just a weekday with nothing special planned. That made it easier and somehow crueler at the same time. I stared at my reflection and said the date out loud once. The week before, I started gathering documents in small, quiet moves. Birth certificate, tax stuff, work contract, anything I might need later. Each folder I pulled felt like another vote for leaving. I slid them into my bag in layers, like building armor. Our kid noticed the bag once and poked it with his foot. "Why is this so full?" he asked, squinting at the zipper. "Grown-up paperwork," I replied, keeping my tone light, ruffling his hair. He accepted that answer way too easily, then ran off again. 2 days before my planned exit, she brought up counseling at dinner. "We could talk to someone neutral," she suggested, stabbing at her food. "Get help working through everything before it hardens." That word hardens landed deep, because mine already had. "Maybe," I said, which we both knew meant no. "You don't sound excited," she observed, pushing her plate away. "I'm tired," I replied, which had become my shield for everything. She went quiet, chewing on whatever that meant, not on her food. That night she reached for me in bed in a way she hadn't in months. There was this desperate edge to it, like she was trying to erase something. Part of me wanted to turn away and refuse on principle. Instead, I let it happen because I knew it was the last time. I'm not proud of that, by the way. Sleeping with someone you plan to leave that week is its own kind of cruel. But I needed that last moment, some farewell she didn't know was a farewell. I wanted to remember we had been real once, not just a broken spreadsheet. The morning I left started with pancakes. I woke up early, cracked eggs, mixed batter, went on autopilot. I hadn't done that in months, so it felt almost like a goodbye ceremony. Our kid wandered in, hair wild, eyes bright, grinning at the surprise. "You're making breakfast," he yelled, climbing onto a chair to watch. "Big day," I said, flipping one, trying not to think about the line. He peppered me with questions about syrup and cartoons in school. Everything normal, which made what I was about to do feel worse. She walked in, rubbing her eyes, surprised to see us already eating. "What's all this?" she asked, leaning down to kiss our kid's head. I handed her a plate, hand steady for the first time in weeks. "Thought we could start today off on a good note," I replied. We ate together, actually laughed at something our kid said. For a second, I felt this stab of doubt so sharp I almost folded. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe we were fixable. Maybe leaving was a bigger sin than staying. But then she glanced at her phone twice under the table. Not obvious, just enough that I noticed because I always noticed. Her face did that tiny flicker thing I recognized way too well. My doubt faded, replaced by a heavy, tired certainty. After breakfast, I walked our kid to the door for school. He slung his backpack on, wiggling with that restless kid energy. "See you tonight," he said, pulling his shoes on crooked. "Yeah," I answered, and my voice almost broke on that one word. He hugged me quick, already reaching for the handle. "I'm going to draw a spaceship today," he announced proudly. "Can't wait to see it," I said, forcing a smile he couldn't see. He ran out, not knowing his drawing would hang in just one home now. The door closed and the house fell into this strange stillness. Just me, her, and the conversation I had decided we would never really have. She started rinsing dishes, back to me, shoulders relaxed. "Thanks for breakfast," she called, casual like any other day. "Can we talk for a minute?" I asked, standing in the doorway. She shut off the water and turned, drying her hands on a towel. Her eyes scanned my face, instantly cautious, like she sensed a shift. "Is this going to ruin my good morning?" she asked, half joking. I thought about answering with Nate's name, about dropping everything. Instead, I forced the rehearsed line out, the one I'd built for days. "I'm not okay here," I said, each word landing heavy. "I feel like I've shrunk into someone I don't recognize." She frowned, moving closer, searching my expression like a puzzle. This is about what happened, isn't it? She asked quietly. Partly, I said, and that was the closest I came to confirmation. It opened my eyes to how checked out I've been too. Her brow creased deeper, confusion mixing with panic in her gaze. I thought we were working on it, she said, hand reaching for my arm. We talked, we agreed to try, I'm doing what I can. I stepped back just enough that her fingers brushed air. I know you're trying, I answered, and I meant that. But something broke in me that I can't glue back together here. I could see the exact moment she realized this wasn't just a mood. Her breathing quickened, chest rising in short, sharp pulls. What are you saying? She asked, voice dropping, eyes locked on mine. I swallowed hard, feeling my heart slam against my ribs. I need space, I said, real space, not couch space. The room seemed to tilt when the word hung there. You mean a break? She asked, grabbing the back of a chair. For how long? A weekend, a few days. Her mind was already racing through timelines and plans. I shook my head once slow, I signed a lease. Her mouth opened then closed, like her brain stalled mid-sentence. You what? She asked, each word separate like she needed to taste them. I rented a place across town, I said, keeping my voice flat. I'm moving out today. She stared at me like I had just started speaking another language. Today, she repeated, stepping toward me, hands out. You can't drop this on me and walk out the same morning. Guilt slammed into me, but I held my ground. I've been planning it for a while, I admitted. That's worse, she snapped, eyes shining, jaw tight. You've been acting normal, making pancakes, sleeping next to me. Her voice cracked on that last part, and I deserved that hit. I didn't know how to do this kindly, I said. Dragging it out felt crueler than ripping the bandage now. She laughed once, bitter, no humor at all. Oh, so you're the merciful one in this story, she answered. That stung because she had a point I couldn't deny. Is there someone else? She asked suddenly, eyes narrowing. The accusation came out fast, reflexive, like she needed another villain. There isn't, I replied, and for once that was simple truth. Then why? She demanded, voice rising, hands trembling. We have a kid, a home, history, all of that. She gestured around like the walls should jump in and support her. You're really tossing it because you feel small. I almost told her no, that I was leaving because she felt huge everywhere else. Because our house had become the last place I mattered. Because I had watched her give emotional energy to someone else for months. Instead, I picked a simpler line, one she might actually hear. I don't want to spend the rest of my life suspicious, I said. Checking your tone, watching your phone, reading meaning into every late night. I don't want our kid to grow up with that version of me. The words came out steadier than I felt. Her shoulders slumped, the fight leaving her all at once. You said you believed me, she whispered, voice shredded. You held my hand, you promised we'd work through it. I closed my eyes for a second, remembering that couch, that choice. I believed the part where you said you were confused, I replied. I'm not anymore, that's the difference between us. That sentence hurt to say, but it was the only one that fit. She pressed her lips together, trying not to cry, then failing anyway. So you get to walk away feeling clear, she said. And I'm just here trying to figure out where everything went wrong. Her tears finally spilled, tracks sliding down her face unchecked. I would have done anything to fix this, she added. I wanted to shout that she'd already done everything to break it. Wanted to go back through every night call, every secret outing, every lie. Instead, I let the moment pass, because dragging it all out felt pointless now. The ending was the same either way. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I said quietly. What I'm doing now is selfish, I know that. I'm choosing to leave instead of staying and rotting in place. Hearing myself call it selfish was weirdly freeing. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand, breathing hard. What do we tell him? She asked, voice barely audible. The him obviously meant our kid, our one shared innocence. We tell him I need time to work on myself, I answered. That sounds like a cliché, she muttered, shaking her head. Yeah, I said, but it's better than him thinking he broke us. I stepped closer, careful, like I was near a wounded animal. I won't badmouth you, I won't poison him against you. Her eyes snapped up at that, surprise cutting through the pain. You think I'd do that to you? She asked, offended and hurt. No, I replied, and I meant it. That's why I can leave like this. Because I trusted her to protect him, even if she hadn't protected us. The next hour blurred into logistics and raw edges. I pulled my half of the closet, my toiletries, my shoes. She watched from the doorway sometimes, then vanished to wipe her face. Once I heard her in the bathroom, trying to muffle a sob. I carried each bag to the car, feeling her eyes on my back. On the third trip, she followed me out and stood on the porch. Are you ever coming back? She asked, hands tucked under her arms. I don't know, I answered, which was the only honest reply left. You're not even willing to try counseling first, she pressed. You decide alone, you act alone, and now I just live with it. Her voice rose, but there was more hurt than anger now. This feels like punishment for something I already apologized for. I stared at the trunk full of my life in lopsided bags. I'm not punishing you, I said, shaking my head. I'm removing myself from a version of me I hate. She exhaled sharply, like that answer knocked the wind out of her. Inside, I grabbed the last item, the drawing from my office. The one with 3 figures and one name that didn't belong. I slipped it into a folder with the rest of my documents. It felt fitting that this stupid picture came with me. Before I left, we stood in the living room facing each other. No background noise, no kid, no ringing phones, nothing to hide behind. If you change your mind, you know where I am, she said. Her voice shook on that last word, like she already knew I wouldn't. I'll call tonight after school, I said, for him. I almost reached for her, out of muscle memory alone. Instead, I shoved my hands in my pockets, fingers touching folded paper. I hope you get whatever peace you were looking for, I added. She laughed once hollow, then shook her head slowly. I wasn't looking for this, she answered, eyes red and tired. You're walking out while I'm still trying to fix us. I nodded, because arguing with that would have been pointless. At the door, I paused and looked back one last time. There was our couch, our kids' shoes, her sweater on a chair. Nothing dramatic. See, no broken frames, no shattered plates, just normal life. That almost made it harder to actually turn the handle. I stepped outside, closed the door gently, and walked to the car. My heart hammered so loud I could hear it in my ears. For a second I thought she might burst out after me, screaming my name. The house stayed quiet, blind still, like it had already adjusted. The drive to the new place felt weirdly calm compared to everything before. Traffic moved, lights changed, nobody cared that my marriage had just collapsed. I parked, carried my bags inside, and dropped them in the empty room. The silence pressed in heavy, but it belonged entirely to me. My phone buzzed an hour later with a message from her. Let me know when you're ready to talk about rules and schedules. No pleading, no dramatic speech, just logistics and reality. Even in that, she was still holding the structure together. I typed back. We'll call after work, we'll figure out a plan for him. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, tempted to add more. Instead, I hit send and set the phone face down. Here's the part that still messes with my head. She walked into that day believing I left over vague unhappiness. Believing I never saw the full scope, never connected all the dots. Believing my exit was about my own midlife spiral, not her choices. And I let her keep that story. I walked away without ever saying the one word that covered everything. I never said cheating. Not once. Not in that house, not in that final conversation, not even in a text. I knew about the calls, the messages, the once that was clearly more. I knew about the park, the fries, the casual family role he slid into. I knew about the confession she edited to make herself easier to forgive. I carried all of that out the door and locked it inside my own head. So when people ask later why we split, I give them the cleaned version. Grew apart. Needed space. Different priorities. All the soft phrases that sound grown-up and nonviolent. But you know the real title of this story already. I always knew she was with someone else, and I never called it out. Not when the phone lit up at 2 in the morning. Not when I shook his hand, not when our kid drew him into our family. I didn't leave because I finally discovered the truth. I left because I couldn't stand who I became knowing it and saying nothing. That was the real betrayal for me, not hers, mine. And that's the part I still have to wake up and live with every day.